Now earlier today you met our U.S. Forest Service entomologist Carol Randall and the students from Center City School who went out on a bug safari to find some insect pollinators in the Arboretum. As I mentioned, Carol works for the Forest Service and also as an entomologist and a 4-H insect instructor. So also we have our student scientist here with us today. And Carol, can you tell us what an entomologist is and does?
An entomologist is someone who studies insects. I work for the United States Forest Service, so I mostly work with insects that feed on trees and weeds. I work with land managers to help them understand what insects do and how they can work with insects to reach their land management objectives.
And how did you become an entomologist? Like, what made you excited about it?
I always liked being outside, and when I was in college, I worked for some professors who studied forest insects and diseases. I loved being in the forest and collecting insects, so when the Forest Service asked me if I'd be willing to get some more education and go to work for them, I jumped at the chance.
Sounds like an amazing opportunity. Now, I know you guys have been out in the Arboretum today, and can you tell us what you did and some of the things that you found out there?
Okay. Well, I showed the kids how to collect and identify insects. We focused on flowering plants, so we collect some pollinators. It's important to know how to identify insects because there's a whole bunch of kinds of insects that pollinate flowers. We've learned a lot about bees, but there are also wasps and flies, beetles, moths and butterflies, and so we wanted to go out and catch a whole bunch of them. If we study what pollinators are active throughout the year, we'll be able to tell if there have been changes in our pollinator populations. And so that might help us understand things like climate change. And these guys were great. They helped me out a lot.
Good job.
Something else that we did when we're out, and if we can study the pollinators, the fact that there are so many different kinds of pollinators can really help us out because it'll ensure that the plants get pollinated. If one kind of pollinator runs into trouble, another kind of pollinator can fill in the gap. This is kind of important for us to study pollinators because 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat comes from a pollinator. So
we like to eat. Well, great.
So all flowering plants potentially harbor pollinating insects. Some of the pollinators like to work during certain seasons only, and other ones will only come out during certain times of the day. There are also some pollinators that will only pollinate one kind of plant. So it's important to get out and look at all sorts of different times of the day and during different times of the year in order to really understand what the pollinators are doing. And so what the kids did with me today, we used some simple equipment to go out and actually check out what's going on in the Arboretum from the pollinator perspective, right?
Yes.
Okay, well this is Andre here, and Andre's got an aerial net. And so Andre, what did we use the aerial net to catch?
We use the aerial net to catch flying insects like bees, butterflies, moths, jumpers, and...
You even caught a big cricket in that, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Charnay is holding a sweep net. And Charnay, what did we use the sweep net for?
We use the sweep net to catch insects that can fly.
That's right. And how did we use the sweep net?
We sweep it 10 times from off of the plants, and then we use the beetle net to see what things we have.
That's right. Now, Devontae, you're holding a beating sheet. And what did we use the beating sheet for?
Use the beating sheet for the stuff that fell out of the
sweep net.
net.
That's right. And Vincent, you're wearing a lovely insect accessory that all of the fashionable entomologists wear, and it's called an aspirator. And what did you use that for?
Well, I used the aspirator to suck up any kind of insects, any kind of small insects, and they go through this silver tube right here, and they will go through, and they're in here.
Okay, and then once we caught the insects, what we would do is we would put them in different kinds of containers so that way we could see what they were. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to show you some of the things that we caught. And we're going to start out with Andre's big catch of the day.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay, Andre, this is a moth. How do we know it's a moth?
We know it's a moth because it has 4 wings, it has clubbed antennae, and
When would we expect to see these kind of moths flying?
you would expect to see them flying around bushes and gardens and trees.
Okay, so that's a moth. That's one of our kinds of pollinators. Okay, next we're going to look at something that Charnay helped us catch. And Charnay, this is a fly. And what can you tell me about flies?
Flies have 2 wings and they're insects, and they also can fly on their backs, and they also crawl up to the ceiling.
Okay. We also caught some really interesting looking beetles today at the Arboretum, and I'm going to kind of put up one of the prettiest ones. And Devante is going to tell us about this. So what do you know about beetles, Devante?
Beetles have 4 wings, 2 wings cover their bodies, and they got 1 line going down their back.
That's right. And finally, Vincent's going to tell us a little bit about the difference between butterflies and moths.
Well, moths, they use their wings to cover up their body as well, and butterflies, their wings stick out when they're in rest. And butterflies fly at night, when moths only fly out butterflies fly during the day, moths fly out at night.
Okay, so I've got 3 questions for you before we stop. Did you have fun?
Yes.
You sure about that, Andre?
Yes.
All right. Okay, did you learn something new?
Yes.
Okay, would you do this again?
Yes.
Okay, well, and I'd like to thank PollinatorLIVE for letting us come out and see what the pollinators are like here in the Arboretum.